Hi there, you are listening to the Guitar Speak podcast, the show produced in Sydney, Australia, where we speak to leading guitar figures from all around the world. My name's Matt Wakeling, and thank you so much for joining me. Now, today, in episode number 84, I speak to LA-based guitarist Terry Wollman. He's forged an amazing career spanning over 35 years as an in-demand guitarist, music director, producer, and composer. He's worked with an amazing array of artists, including Jarreau, Michael McDonald, Billy Preston, the band Phillips, Joan Baez, Joe Walsh, Kev Moe, and Joe Sample, just to name a few. Terry has released 7 full-length solo albums, and his latest instrumental release, No Problem, has topped the Billboard Smooth Jazz charts. In this first instalment of a 2-part interview, Terry talks us through his early influences, explains how studying arrangement at Berklee transformed him from a guitarist into a musician, tells us about building a career in LA in the early 80s, and getting an impromptu and fairly unrequired lesson from Lindsey Buckingham, and much, much more. Now, if you've been listening to the show for a while, you'll know some of our episodes, around 25, 30 minutes, like the one with John Norum from Europe from last week. By the way, thank you for the great response to that. Some of those interviews are part of a scheduled press day for those artists, and they have a short amount of time. Other interviews, we like to do a full-length interview, and we've certainly had the chance to do that with Terry, and it was really cool to meet Terry. Really just clicked when we first spoke, and we ended up spanning this discussion over 2 conversations. So what you're about to hear now is part 1. Before we get to that, though, I want you to hear part of that new track I just mentioned, No Problem, by Terry Wollman. Then we'll get straight into our interview. Terry Wollman, welcome to the Guitar Speak podcast.
Thank you so much. Happy to be here with you.
Fantastic. Now, Terry, you've had an amazing career, well over 30 years as a professional musician, producer, an actor, a radio producer, which I'd love to talk about all of that stuff. But most recently, you've released a new single called No Problem, which has done really great. I see it's the #1 most added recording to the Billboard Smooth Jazz charts.
Yeah, Matt.
That's very cool.
I'm very happy, excited about that. And I'm also excited that I've been getting play in Australia and all around the world,
Fantastic.
as well. So that makes me smile.
That's very cool. I mean, bottom line, it's a great tune with some great guitar playing and arrangements.
Thanks.
Tell me about the song. Tell me, how did that come about?
Well, it's a song that I had written actually a long time ago and had never recorded. And last year for my 60th birthday, we did a live concert, and I thought it would be fun to pull that tune out. And we played it live, and we had so much fun playing it that everybody in the band basically on their own came to me and said, we should record that song. And, and we basically just went in the studio just for the fun of it. And that happens so rarely, these days. And, once you start making records and, everybody wants to know, when's the session, when's the tour. And this was we recorded it just really for the pure joy of going in and having fun recording this song. And when I knew that we were going to do that, I said, well, I'll put it up on iTunes. I'll definitely, we'll release it. So let's go do it. And we did. And John Robinson, JR, came in and played drums, and who's amazing. He plays on most of my records, or he has for a long, long time. Greg Manning played keyboards, who's a wonderful piano player and producer in his own right. Hussein Jeffrey played bass, and my friend Mindy Abair played sax, and it was really fun because I've known her a long time and have worked with her normally a little bit more in a contemporary jazz or contemporary instrumental genre,
Okay.
but she's definitely gone the blues rock route, and I thought it'd be fun to bring her in on this. So I called her up and said, I want to know, I need to find a really good rock sax player. Can you recommend anybody? Just joking around with her, of course, and because that's she fancies herself as she well should, as a rock sax player.
Okay.
So it was the perfect combination. So we just had a blast,
That's
and
great.
and we put it out, and it's taking wings. It's really getting some wonderful feedback, and again, you never know if you're going to end up on the Billboard charts, regardless of what you've previously done, and it's always a, a a treat, and something that I'm proud of. So,
Fantastic.
and it was, yeah, we had a really fun time recording it, and just for all the guitar players that are listening, we recorded live. We went in a studio and just hit record and played it, and that was the song. And then I brought it back to my studio, and I thought, "Nah, let me see, I might want to add a couple of rhythm guitar parts. I wasn't sure if I wanted to keep the purity of the arrangement and just go, straight up live, or if adding a couple of layers of guitars might still stay true to my intention with the song, and add a little bit more uh, meat to it. And so I did. I came home, played around with it, and came up with a couple of other rhythm guitar parts that I think kind of help propel the song and give it more contour and texture.
Sure, sure.
Yeah.
The the guitar tone is fantastic. What are you playing through?
Well, I'm a Mesa Boogie uh, aficionado, and I've been endorsing them for a very, very long time. I started playing their amps after my very first tour that I did with Billy Preston back in
Oh
1981.
wow,
That was
wow.
my first opportunity to tour with a major artist, and travel the world. And when I came back, I bought my first Mesa Boogie amp, and then I developed a relationship with them, and I've been using their amps ever since. So that was actually through the new Mesa Boogie Mark 525. So it's a
Yep.
small,
The little head,
it's
yeah.
their, it's that little head,
Yeah, cool.
and which, by the way, is really light, which I'm very happy about.
Great.
And because I've got a rectifier head, that doesn't leave the studio,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
because it's a beast. But that one
Absolutely.
sounds great also. But that was all through the Mark 525. I actually used the distortion uh, in the amp. Just tube distortion with a single 12 cabinet for the lead sound. But I also have a couple of exotic pedals that I use that I really love as well. But the main sound, everything was through the Boogie amp with either different guitars. I used my Valley Arts uh, custom guitars from that I've had since the early '90s, and I also used my Duesenberg. I've got a double cat that I used for one of the rhythm parts too. But but either what I did was I just would either change the pickup selector and dial in a slightly different EQ on the amp, because the EQ settings on the amp are really simple on the new Mark 5, 25.
Okay.
And so I just made sure that they sounded different sonically, so that we weren't all speaking in the same frequency like
Yeah,
you would
sure.
do if there was more than one guitar player.
Hmm.
And essentially there's three guitar players on the track, all three being me. So I needed them to have a different point of view, not just performance wise, but also sonically.
Okay.
So, but
Yeah, great.
it's all the Mesa Boogie out. Yeah.
Great. Very cool.
Yeah. Hmm.
Man, well, we're going to talk through your career. When we get to the move to LA, it just seems like there was lots of great timing because Boogie was, just getting going then, I guess, and um,
Yeah.
LA being a mecca of music for a lot of music. But yeah, let's go back. So you grew up
Sure.
in Miami,
Right. Born and raised in Miami.
Florida. Um,
Mhm.
when did you start playing guitar?
I started, um, I think, in late elementary school. Taking obligatory, excuse me, obligatory guitar lessons,
Uh-huh.
like everybody, and I took them with my older brother, uh, and I really, besides the bleeding fingers and the from all the cheap acoustic guitars with the action way too high that we all started on.
Yeah, yeah.
You know, um, I toughed it out and got through the pain, the physical pain of it, so that I actually continued playing, and I really loved it. Uh, and then I went on to take piano lessons, and I really wanted to play drums, and I could not convince my parents to get me a drum kit. Understandably, they just didn't want to deal with the noise, and so they said, "Well, if you want to take drum lessons, you have to work on a practice pad for 6 months." And so I did. So I took drum lessons, and then um, I graduated to talking them into buying me a snare drum, and I took lessons for another 6 months on the snare drum, and then I thought, I'm going to be 40 or 50 years old by the time I get a full kit at this pace. So, so, so I kind of gave up on that, um, and then went back. I continued playing piano and guitar for fun and just learning songs with friends, like you do, and uh, and then I got serious about playing guitar when I was 15.
Okay.
That's really when I got focused about it.
What was the
I had
impetus
gone.
there?
Oh well, that's a great question. Uh, Looking back at why I made my decision on guitar versus piano, it's kind of it's laughable because uh, at the time I thought, well, I need to. The thing that prompted me to actually get serious about one instrument or focused was my dad. Basically, just saw me kind of flittering around from one thing to the other, and he basically. Uh, May I use profanity on the show? Or we,
Well,
yeah,
we're ready, G, so
I
I'll bleep you. So yeah, go for it.
he basically said you need to or get off the pot,
Okay.
and he said because he goes, you should just pick something. I mean, you
Yeah.
clearly love music,
Uh-huh.
so why don't you just pick something and start focusing on it and see where it takes you. And I thought, well, if you're traveling and you don't always have a piano, you're at the mercy of wherever you show up. There's a piano and it might be in tune, it might not be in a tune, but you can always carry a guitar with you. So I thought, well, I'm gonna focus on guitar.
Hmm.
And it's the first instrument I started on, but that was kind of the reason that I chose it, not knowing as time progressed and as technology progressed and as my career progressed, you can't just show up anymore with just a guitar to to a recording session or a gig. You
Yeah.
need to bring an acoustic and a couple of electrics and pedals and amps and keyboard players oftentimes just walk in and play an acoustic piano.
Uh-huh.
Don't carry anything in, so it kind of full circle. There was an irony to my choice, but it's the instrument that I love. I mean, I'm absolutely in love with guitar, as I know you are, and it's just held my passion, for all these years. So when I was 15, I moved to Mexico City with my father and my older brother for 6 months, and we lived there and went to school there. And I bought a nylon string guitar while I was in Mexico, and started taking lessons from somebody that I had met who was an older guy who was just this wonderful guitar player, and he started teaching me some songs. And then when I came back to the States, I just continued. I didn't really continue formally, but I had a lot of friends who played guitar who were taking lessons, and they would teach me what they were learning. So I got it secondhand, essentially. But the the friends that I had great teachers, and they were good players. So they just, we just all showed each other everything we knew, about. We would share songs and open tunings or techniques or finger picking styles. We would just show each other how to do things, and I really learned a lot then. And then I got really focused once I got out of high school
Hmm.
and I began college, and I went to what we have it's available to us is junior college. I don't know if you have that there. The colleges in America are generally 4-year colleges where you would get a degree, but there's also uh, there's junior colleges where it's a 2-year program,
Okay.
and they're
Okay.
generally they're private, but they're much less expensive, especially when you're a resident of a city or a state.
Okay.
If you
Sure.
live there, it's close to free
Yeah.
to studying there. So it was a cost effective way for me to go because when I was at that point, I was literally on my own financially. My mom was still around, but my dad had passed away in an accident when I was 17. So I ended up, it was really a very rough time for me. And I finished my last year of high school and ended up just literally living on my own and putting myself. Hi, I'm back.
Oh, yeah, that's great. That's great.
Okay, let's see if that works.
Okay.
Thank you.
No worries.
Sorry about that.
No, 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 not at all. I'm sorry, we're in a really big moment here. Uh,
Right. Well, we don't want to lose anything. So, it was a traumatic time for me emotionally and personally, but
yeah.
but it was actually um in hindsight, it's really, I say that starting to study music more seriously and doing something that I loved gave me a ladder to climb out of this hole that I was in emotionally of being sad,
Cool.
and not having a direction, and it gave me a purpose,
Hmm.
and I needed a purpose, and so I threw myself to the best of my ability. I threw myself into it, and found that I was enjoying learning about theory and really studying formally, having great guitar teachers, and finally starting to have people show me how it all works, and how to become a great musician.
Wow. And what kind of stuff were you learning in junior college? What kind of styles were you getting into?
Well, it was the first time I started studying jazz, and I really didn't have any interest in jazz
Uh-huh.
at the time. I was interested in rock and pop music, uh, and but that's what they taught. I was studying classical music. I had a classical guitar teacher, and then I had a jazz guitar teacher because they didn't back then really teach you rock in school.
Hmm.
Um, but jazz I found encompassed everything that wasn't classical. In other words, so we worked on reading music. We worked on learning and appreciating different styles of music,
Yeah, sure.
uh, and um, learning about harmony and technique. And then I just started expanding out from that point.
Okay.
And we were also at the same time we were taking ear training classes, and we were forced to sing in the choir, which
Okay.
which and we had to actually be in a musical. They had musicals in the school because there was a theater department, so they needed more voices. So it was my first. I'd studied drama in high school. I was in some plays, and I was just in the creative part of high school. I was in art. We were learning how to do ceramics and sculpture and painting, um, and then I had a really wonderful creative writing teacher. So we wrote every day. We wrote poems and short stories, and just really learning how to express myself artistically.
Okay.
And and then I was also very physical. I was on the track team and running and water skiing. It's Florida, so
Nice.
there's always an opportunity to be swimming or water skiing or sailing or
Very
on your
cool.
bicycle out in the sunshine. So it's a combo pack.
Awesome. Now, somehow out of all that sunshine, you ended up in Berkeley, where it's much colder, the Berkeley College of
Yeah.
Music. When did you move up there? When did that study start for you?
Well, I moved up there, and by the way, it was a shock. It was an absolute shock to my
I
system,
bet.
which I imagine it's pretty tropical climate where you live too, correct? Or
Yeah,
does
it's
it get
it's
cold?
pretty warm. It's pretty warm here.
Yeah,
What we call cold is not really what you guys call cold.
same thing.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, but you know, so similar to growing up in Miami.
Okay.
So it's a subtropical climate,
Yeah.
and so I moved to Boston, and it was freezing. I mean, it was just shocking how cold it was and how gray it was.
Yeah.
It took a lot to get used to, but I went to the 2 years of junior college, and then I moved to Boston after that to go to Berkeley to finish my studies
Hmm.
or continue my studies. And uh, I graduated Berkeley in 1980, and I was there for about 2.5 years, and I just went straight through.
Okay.
So I didn't take the summers off for vacation or anything. Again, because I was supporting myself and taking out student loans, and
Sure.
uh, so I needed to do it the most cost-effective way. And I basically you know immerse myself in the city and the culture, and also uh, when you go to a school like that, I I I basically fell asleep pretty much every night with a guitar in my hand. I
Uh-huh.
mean, I would wake up in the morning, when the alarm went off, and the guitar was in bed next to me.
Right.
Yeah, because there were not enough hours in the day with all the work that every single one of the teachers gave you at that school.
Hmm.
It was a very challenging
Wow.
school, but it was um, pretty amazing to be there. I got a great education,
Yeah.
and I tell people that I feel like I went in as a guitar player and I came out as a musician.
Can you
Do you
expound
know what
on?
I mean by that?
Well, I think I
Well,
do. What does that mean to you?
well, it means that it gave me the ability, first of all, to listen
Hmm.
in a much broader way. Like they really began to show me how to hear music and not just listen to the guitar,
Sure.
but really listen to the lyrics, to the melody, to the harmonic point of view, the chords, the rhythmic figures, and then even go deeper. What's the hi-hat playing? And
Hmm.
to me, before I went to to school there, it's like I I never knew that there was any reason for me to know what the hi-hat was playing.
Right.
It just didn't dawn on me.
Sure.
So my attention wasn't there. I mean, I loved a great drum solo. I listened to the drums, but I wasn't in the minutia of it.
Sure.
And
Yep.
like in the way that we listen to guitars, like
Yeah.
when you and I listen to something that's on the radio, we know if it's a steel string or a nylon string or a high strung guitar, or if it's an open tuning, or if it's got a flanger on it or a
Yep.
chorus. We know
Yep.
that the difference of those sounds. And then you go further, then you learn to identify a major chord or a minor chord. You hear it and you know what it is. And so to start to really get out of your own selfishness as a musician, and listen to the other things that are going around in your environment that are not only interesting to listen to, but they feed you. I mean, when you really learn to play, it's a lot of it is learning how to listen,
Yeah.
and
Absolutely.
then so that you interact. The hi hat has become my best friend.
Right.
you know Especially when I work with drummers like John Robinson or
Mm.
Luis Conte, and Lenny Castro on percussion, or the great Ricky Lawson before he passed away. You play with guys like that, and they're feeding you ideas. You know, as a rhythm player,
Hmm.
when it's time to play a rhythm guitar part, they're spoon feeding it to you. You can just listen to what they're doing and buckle up and go along for the ride.
That's awesome.
And
I love that.
grab some of their rhythms and basically expand on their ideas as well, or they're listening to your rhythms and they're expanding on your ideas. So yeah, and then I also started to learn more about conducting and arranging and orchestration,
Hmm.
and learning how to write for strings and woodwinds and horns, and how to write a bass part out, yeah, you
That's
how
awesome.
to work with singers, and I was always really in love with producing. I always wanted to be a record producer. I just liked it. I was fascinated by it, and I loved the idea of making records. And when growing up in Miami, one of the most amazing studios that was there was Criteria Recording Studios, and Eric Clapton recorded there, and the Bee Gees, and the Eagles, and a lot of people came to Miami to record, and they went to that studio. And so I had the opportunity to go to that studio to record a few times, but also to be a fly on the wall and just see what was going on. We were there one time recording some little project, and Fleetwood Mac was in the next room.
Nice.
Yeah, and
Very cool.
I walked out into the the lobby area where the pool hall, the pool table was, and the Coke machines for people to the lounge, and and Lindsey Buckingham was standing right there, and I went up and talked to him, and asked him how he played Landslide, because I had learned Landslide from the record,
That's great.
and the singer that was in the band that I was in kept telling me that I was playing it wrong. And I thought, oh, well, I'm just going to ask him. So I said, what? Do you put the capo on the third fret, or whatever my question was?
That's great.
And he just kind of looked at me and said, well, yeah, actually, that's how I play it. And I go, wow, thank you. I said, could you do me a favor and go tell the singer that I'm working with? I think I'd forgotten completely about that, but I actually think I asked him to do that, and he did.
That's so great. Really? Oh, that's the best.
Yes. Yeah.
And I bet that singer never hassled you again about that part.
No. She believed me from that point on.
You can't get better than that. You can't get more more of a thumbs up than Lindsey Buckingham saying, "Yep, you're doing it right."
Matt, I'd completely forgotten about that because I don't even know how old I was, but
I love that.
It's pretty funny. Yeah. So I went to Boston and got immersed in this amazing environment.
Yeah.
That was just all music, 24 hours a day.
Well, it seems like, given that you did head into record producing and music directing and arranging, this training really expanded you from, like you said, beyond just being a guitar player to being a musician. Tell me about LA. When did you move there? Was that soon after?
I stayed in Boston for another year, and I was teaching guitar lessons, and I was playing in a band or two, and trying to figure out what to do with the rest of my life. Quite seriously, as to where, not what to do, but where to do it. And where I had the best chance of making success happen. And I wanted to go back to Miami because I love Miami and it's a beautiful place to live. But there were a couple of friends that I still have, but they were very successful musicians. Then had toured. One of my friends, Bobby Thomas, played percussion with Weather Report back then, and
awesome.
and Bobby and I went to junior high school together in high school, and are still friends to this day. And Bobby told me, he said, "Don't come back home." He said, "I love you and I miss you, but there's nothing here." He said, he goes, "The only work I get is when I leave town and tour."
Okay.
So he said, you need to go to New York or LA. And a few other people said the same thing to me, that were successful musicians that were living in Miami,
right,
but had already established themselves in the rock and pop recording world and touring world. So, and quite frankly, I was cold. I didn't want to live in New York. I just didn't want to live in another cold place. And at the time, I felt like a little. I'm tougher now than I used to be. I've got a tougher, thicker skin. A lot of it from working in television. For all the years that I did, where it gets you to not personalize everything and not be, a fragile artist. And so I didn't feel tough enough to live in New York. It just didn't feel like my environment, especially having grown up in Miami, which is pretty laid back. People are friendly. I mean, there certainly was violence and gangs and things like that. But it's a warm, friendly environment. And I didn't at the time see New York as a warm, friendly environment. So that left Los Angeles. So,
Hmm.
uh, and that was a difficult decision for me because I had been to LA when I was younger. And I remember passing through and it was hot, which I don't mind. I love good hot weather, but it was smoggy. The air was really dirty. And I made a vow that I would never live in a city like LA. Yeah, and not thinking of the weight of making a vow like that. Just, you're a young teenage kid and you go, I would never live in a place like this. And then when it came time to think about moving to Los Angeles, it I had to get over my bias and my pre-existing prejudice against the city. And so I did. And I thought, well, let me come to LA, and because a lot of records are made in LA and a lot of people tour, leaving from LA and or live in LA that are touring artists. And I thought, let me just go there and I'll give it a year
Hmm.
without even making a decision. And I made a promise to myself that I wouldn't come to any kind of a decision or conclusion about the experience until at least a year was up. So I didn't want to come in with a chip on my shoulder,
Sure.
uh, and a bad attitude. So
Yeah.
I made the move. I packed. I had a Honda station wagon, and I packed the guitar. I had
What were you
an
playing?
electric guitar. I had I had a Les Paul Custom,
Nice.
and then I had an acoustic guitar. I don't even remember what kind it was, and just steel string acoustic guitar, two guitars, an amp, some clothes, and a Champion juicer. For 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 making my fresh juice.
Oh,
and
that's great.
and I know that was it. And so I actually had some books too, but a friend of mine shipped them out to me once I found a place to stay.
Okay.
And
How old were
I had a
you
sleep.
at this stage, Terry?
I was probably 22 or
Yeah. Wow.
23. I remember turning 21 in Boston.
Okay.
So yeah, I might have been 23. Yeah,
Wow.
I would guess 23.
Yeah.
Uh, 24, the oldest.
Okay.
I Yeah. I mean, you can do the math. I was born in 1956 and I
Hmm.
moved to LA in 1981.
Yeah.
Uh,
I've had a
Callers, you can figure it out.
yes.
Just
Do the sums. Do the math.
yeah.
I I've
Right,
had
carry the one. Right.
oh man, I've had a few guests that have made the move to LA.
Yeah,
I spoke to Scott Henderson. He's from Florida as well. He pretty much
that's right.
echoed your
Yeah,
comments that he loved Florida, but that there wasn't much there in terms of the music scene.
right. Yeah.
He must have moved probably just a little bit after you. Joe Elliott, more from the I think the Midwest.
Yes.
I don't know if you know Joe, but he seems to have
I
been some
don't know
similar
Joe.
sort
I
of
know
stuff.
who he is.
Okay.
I do know Scott. Yeah,
Yeah, cool.
I do.
So the idea I get from those guys that the LA in the early 80s, there's a lot of music going on. There's a lot of gigs, but there's also a lot of guitar players and a lot of competition. So
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. That's accurate. Yes.
how did you
Uh,
go at the start? How did you buy food and get established? What was that like?
when I was in Berkeley, I believe there were 1,000 guitar players in the program. So I had already been used to being in an environment where I was one of many,
Okay.
and there was a lot of, um, for lack of a better word, competition. To me, I don't really view it as competition
Hmm.
because I believe that there's enough for everybody in life, and if something is meant to be yours, if you work really hard for it, then it's yours, and you'll get it. So, but there was a lot of traffic. As you say, the freeway was crowded,
Uh-huh.
and it still is. So when I moved to LA, that didn't really throw me, because I knew that the competition was going to be pretty fierce, because this is where people move to to work in the music industry. It's one of the meccas in the world, not the only place.
Sure.
So, uh, so the advice that I was given was to uh, just get out and meet people. Say yes to everything, uh, every opportunity, go do it. show up early, have a great attitude, be prepared, bring an extra pencil to a rehearsal,
Mm-hmm.
bring extra picks, batteries, strings, uh, just and make yourself somebody, not just about your playing ability, but just the hang factor, that people would want to be around you because you're easy to work with and that you're enthusiastic and passionate and respectful
Mm-hmm.
of, show up late and keep everybody hanging. And so and they said go to clubs, go to all of the clubs, and just introduce yourself to people, go hear everybody and meet people. And I remember it was quite um, amazing to me and a little confusing in that I went to a club called the Baked Potato, which is a club that a lot of people play at in Los
Yeah,
Angeles, a
yeah.
lot of well-known musicians.
Yep.
And I went there one night to hear Larry Carlton play guitar, and Abraham Laboriel was playing and bass, and I had gotten to know Abraham from working with Joe Sample and the Crusaders. I was already doing
Okay.
a little bit of work with Joe as his assistant,
Okay, cool.
and before I had started doing a little bit of guitar playing with them as well. But
Yep.
but I went to the Baked Potato to go hear this amazing band, and there were about the same amount of people in the audience as there were on the stage.
Uh-huh.
And I was blown away. I actually could not wrap my head around that.
Yeah, wow.
It was a weeknight. I think it was a Tuesday night or something, but it was
Uh-huh.
like I didn't understand how you could go to this famous club and see these, infamous musicians, legends that I'd only heard about, and it's not sold out and not packed. And it gave me an understanding that there was just so many things going on all the time that it's hard to fill a club, no matter who you are. Um, it's harder even now because people don't need to leave the house anymore
Sure.
for entertainment. They just put Netflix on and whatever, and stay out of rush hour traffic. So, but I just started doing that and meeting people and definitely saying yes to everything. I played in a few different bands. Um, and some I got paid for, and some I was supposed to get paid for and didn't get paid for, and others I did just for the experience of it, and it started leading to me getting more experience, but also broadening my relationships with people.
Okay.
And but the irony of it is this first tour that I had that I mentioned earlier in the show with Billy
Billy
Preston.
Preston, yeah.
I got that tour because I was parking cars at the Playboy Mansion as my part-time job
Yeah.
on the weekends, and Billy Preston's drummer parked cars on
Okay.
the weekends when he wasn't on tour with Billy.
Wow.
And a lot of people did that, and it opened my eyes up to this very odd thing where there was another great guitar player that I had met who played with Leo Sayer at the time, and I thought this is so amazing, and he's parking cars on the weekend.
Yes. Yeah.
And then he'd disappear for 2 months and then he'd be back. And so there were different musicians that were touring with major artists who, when the tours were over, they'd come and pick up some regular work. And same thing with actors.
Mm-hmm.
There were people that you were acting with, and or that you were working with, and they disappear, and then they come back and you go, hey, where have you been? And they go, I was just working on a movie, some sci-fi movie called Blade Runner. I think it's going to be pretty cool. That and a year later, Blade Runner's out, and
Wow.
and you're still parking cars with this guy.
Yeah.
And it kind of didn't make any sense
Yeah.
that people who were extremely talented and doing very high profile work still had to park cars on the weekend. So that was a little intimidating as well. But through that experience, I and opportunity, because I look at experiences as opportunities, whether they're challenging or not. They are still opportunities if you want to look at them in a positive way.
Mm-hmm.
And I became friends with the drummer Jared, and we started playing together in a little band for fun. And I told him one time he had actually gone on 3 tours and come back, in this first year that I was living in LA. And I finally couldn't take it anymore. And I just said to him, I said, look, you're my friend, and I'm at risk of jeopardizing our friendship because I've got very few friends in this city. I don't know that many people yet, but I'm just going to say this one time and I will never say it again. I did not move here to park cars. I moved here to tour and make records. So if there's ever an opportunity for me to get an audition with Billy, I would be so grateful. I just wanted you to know that. And he goes, okay, cool, man. Thanks for telling me. And about a month or so later, I got a call and he said, hey, what are you doing tomorrow? And I said, I don't know. I'm around, just practicing. And
Yeah.
he said, I got you an audition for Billy.
Wow.
And the amazing thing about that, Matt, is I showed up at the audition. It was at Billy's house, and the full band was there. And there was one other guitar player there, and he was from England. And Billy already knew him. He knew him through the Beatles. And I don't remember what the guy's name was. It was a long, long time ago, but there were only 2 people that were auditioning for this tour in this whole city.
Wow.
Of amazing musicians. They didn't advertise, and there were. Look, I've been to other auditions. I went to an audition for Seal one time, and there were probably 50 guitar players that they saw that day.
Okay.
And by the time I got there, at the end of the day, they had already chosen their guitar player. I didn't even get to audition.
Right.
And I had been called by the record label.
Wow.
They called me and said, hey, we'd love for you to come down, learn these 3 songs. And I went, and I saw Seal walking to his car in the parking lot.
Okay.
As I pulled up. And
that's a bad sign.
Right. So, they had already decided. Somebody came in, and that was it. So, and they were tired. They didn't need to see 51 guitar players.
Sure.
To find out, what they were looking for. But with the Billy Preston audition, it was just this other guitar player and I, and they put us in the room at the same time.
Oh, wow.
Which I had never experienced before.
That's
and
awkward.
Never experienced again. That's a good choice of words. It was incredibly awkward and disrespectful and bizarre and weird. And I just didn't even know how do you do this? So we basically just all started playing. Billy just started playing a song.
Mm-hmm.
He goes into Nothing for Nothing, and everybody's playing because they all know the music. This other guitar player starts playing. I start playing. It is so loud that I can't even tell which part is me and which part is the other guy. I couldn't hear. I knew I was playing, but I couldn't hear what I was playing. And I felt it slipping away. It's like the ship has left the dock and it's sailing away. And I thought, wait a second, you have to do something, because you're going to lose this. You're going to lose this opportunity. This is what you moved here for. Just wake up, snap out of it, do something. Just do something. And, and my nature was to not, look, I'm all for moving forward in life as long as it doesn't hurt other people.
Sure.
I don't believe on stepping on people to get to what you need to do. So it went against my nature at the time to basically do something that would not bear well for him.
Yeah. Well, it took you a year to ask your friend about the gig, so
it's a good point.
I get that.
Yeah. Because I felt like I've got a really good friend here. I don't want to lose a friend.
Yeah.
I didn't know many people, but yeah, that's a very good point. Point taken, Matt. But anyway, so what I did was I thought, make your move, man. So I turned around to my amp and just turned it all the way up to 10, literally. And I went right up to Billy. He's sitting at the B3 and singing and playing. And I went right in his face, and I'm just playing and dancing and sweating and smiling and just giving it everything I had, as if my life depended on it, because it felt like it did. And just played. And we were all playing, and I basically got hired.
Wow.
Yeah, I got the gig.
Very cool.
Right. And by the way, Matt, in that, I mentioned Joe Sample and the Crusaders, and that is by no means a small aside or chapter in my life. It was
Yeah,
very
sure.
pivotal to work with Joe and to begin working with the Crusaders. I met uh, Joe first because he needed somebody to do some orchestrations for him for the Tokyo Philharmonic. They were going over there, and he didn't have time.
Hmm.
It's not that he didn't know how to orchestrate.
Sure.
He was an amazing arranger,
Yeah, yeah.
as well as one of the most unique and brilliant piano players in the world. With his he'd play a single note on the piano and you would know it was him. On the acoustic piano. Uh, so basically, I met Joe and ended up writing. Here's another one: opportunities and learning how to say yes to everything.
Hmm.
That his manager had said to me, because I met with the manager, and he had said, do you know how to write for strings? And I said, yeah, I do. And he said, and you can write for harp and timpani, right? And I said, yes, I can. And I had never written for harp and timpani in my life. I had studied it, but I never, I never
Yeah,
actually wrote something and heard it played by a timpani,
sure.
or wrote a harp part out. I'd seen them on scores. We'd studied orchestral scores
Yeah.
in school when we were learning how to, to conduct and everything. So, but I said yes, and then I very immediately went out and found myself a harp player, and called her up. And this is a woman I'm still friends with, and basically said, "Hi, my name's Terry Wollman. I just got hired to write some harp parts out for an orchestral piece, and I'd love to be able to come and show you some things I've written and just get your feedback regarding fingerings and ranges of
Hmm.
instrument and you know can I pay you or take you out to lunch? Or I don't even know if I offered to pay her because I probably didn't have the money.
Uh-huh.
I probably said, can I buy you lunch? And she said, just come on over. And she played it and said, this would sound better an octave up. And let me really show you how the pedals work.
Wow, that is so cool.
You need a few seconds to be able to change from here to here. And then I wrote this orchestration and got hired again. And Joe Sample became a friend and a mentor to me as well,
Hmm.
and ended up playing on my first record.
Fantastic. That's a pretty good
Yeah,
side
and
guy to get for your first record.
you think? And Matt, the funny thing about that is, yeah. So in 1988, I recorded my very first record. It's called Bimini,
Yes.
and Bimini is an island in the Bahamas.
Hmm.
That's the closest island to Florida, to
Yeah.
Miami. So, and I'd sailed there when I was a kid, and
Very
so
cool.
yeah. So I put out this record, and it's got Abraham Laboriel on bass and Paulinho da Costa on percussion and
Oh my
Ernie
goodness.
Watts on sax. Dean Parks played guitar
Oh wow,
with
really?
me because I wanted two guitars on a couple of things. And so Dean came in and Joe Sample played on two songs. And uh, who else was playing? Pat Coyle played piano and Tom Breckline on drums,
Oh wow.
uh, who was amazing. Yeah. But and it started getting all of this radio play because back then, the radio DJs and program directors could play whatever they wanted,
Hmm.
especially in instrumental music. If they liked it, they played it, and if they wanted to play an 8-minute song, they would play it. They really it was a they played things that moved them and excited them, and it was a very cool time in radio. Uh, Before things were being really dictated by marketing groups and other elements that came in that started to homogenize
Hmm.
a lot of instrumental music.
Yeah.
So, but regardless, this album came out. It was getting played all across the United States and around the world. Of course, that was pre-internet, but it was still getting radio play around the world. But I was calling program directors up and station managers to thank them because I was really grateful.
Hmm.
And I just wanted to thank them. And um, I actually asked the manager of the Crusaders, of Joe Sample and the Crusaders, if I could use their phone to make these long distance phone calls because I couldn't afford to make the calls.
Hmm.
Yeah, because now we have cell phones and it costs the same to call New York as it costs to call around the block.
Yeah,
You're
sure.
not paying long distance anymore. But back then, you're on the clock. So he
Absolutely.
said, yeah, sure. Yeah, come on in. Come on in for a couple hours and use the phone. So it was really nice of him to do that. And he actually didn't think I'd be there a few hours. He thought I would call one or two radio stations and get shot down and then, walk away with my tail between my legs, having been taught a valuable lesson about whatever. I don't know what that lesson was, but that's not a lesson that I learned because I called up and I wasn't asking them to do anything for me. They were already doing it. I was calling to show them, to express my gratitude. And I didn't realize that not many artists called radio stations to say thank you. They were mostly calling, asking for something or complaining about
Sure.
something.
Yeah, yeah.
So it stuck out. But the other thing is these people were playing my songs on their shows and not just one song, but most radio stations were basically playing two or three songs at a time from the record and
Wow, that's
not
cool.
always the same songs. Different stations chose different songs. Yeah, it was very cool and really thrilling for me. And so they were very curious about who I was because they had never heard of me. And more than one would say, first of all, thank you for calling. It's so nice to speak with you and love your album. And I'm a little embarrassed to say this. I feel like I should know, but I've never really heard much of your work before. Where did you come from? Can you tell me a little bit about yourself? Because again, they would say, I'm embarrassed that I don't know more about you. And I would say, well, this is my first record. That's why you don't know more about me. And they said, well, how did you get all these people to play on your
Yes.
record if this is your first record? And I said, I asked them to. These are people that I had met through working with Joe and the Crusaders, and they had become my friends. And this was really important to me to make the best record that I knew how to make. And that's why I moved to LA. My goal was to work with the best musicians in the world, or some of the best musicians in the world. No offense intended to anybody anywhere else in the world,
Sure.
but I knew that I needed to move to a city where it was world class musicianship,
Mhm.
the highest level. And so these were people that I had gotten to know, and I asked them, and I said, I'm making my first record, and would you be open to playing on it? And pretty much everybody said yes. And and I haven't looked back since. And people still ask me, how did you get so and so to play on your record?
Mhm.
How did you get Michael McDonald to sing on your
Yeah,
record?
yeah.
It's like, well, I knew people that were in his band and I had met him before briefly, backstage or this or that, but I really wanted to record one of Michael's songs and I thought it'd be really amazing to have him sing on it if he might. And I asked and it happened. And they didn't, I mean, it didn't just happen the next day. The answer was yes. And then it took about 6 months to figure out how to schedule it. And a lot of times I think people say yes. Uh, um, in that moment, they mean it because they're musicians and they want to make music with great people or they're flattered
Mhm.
or just in the moment you catch them off guard and they say yes because it sounds like a really cool, fun thing to do. And then later on, when you try to schedule it, that yes is sort of ambiguous because all of a sudden they've got other things that they need to be doing. They're traveling and there's other obligations.
Sure.
So then they start to wonder why they said yes or wish they hadn't said yes or still really want it to be yes but don't have the time.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, so yes can mean a lot of things, um but I circled back and I gave everybody the opportunity to say no as well.
Mhm.
When I would go back, I would say, if you are too busy to do this, I understand, and hopefully we can do this some other time. And I think because again, I'm bringing gratitude and respect back into the equation.
Sure.
It's a little. I found looking back or along my journey, I found that that was not really typical.
Mhm.
People are more forceful or aggressive or reactive or have this expectation or they just get pissed off. And they'll go, well, you said yes. I guess, all right, I'll go somewhere else. Thanks a lot, man.
Yeah, sure.
Bye. And for me, it's like, I didn't hear, yes is being no. And other people would say to me, that is a no. It's like if somebody says yes 3 times and it's still not happening, yeah, that's kind of them saying no. It's like, well, why don't they just say no? So,
Oh
and what
man.
would happen is I would go back this one last time, the third time, and say, look, the last thing I want to do is put you on the spot or make you feel awkward about, following through on something that you had said that you'd like to do. I understand you're really busy, and I just want to thank you for even considering doing this. It really means a lot to me, and thanks, and look forward to doing something with you in the future. And they go, well, when was the recording date again? Yeah,
That's cool.
that yeah, it is kind of cool. So I suppose it's a tip to you and to our listeners, but I look, I'm sure you've experienced that too by asking guests to be on your show,
Mm,
too, and or to play in your music or play in your band, or there's
sure.
and even in teaching, it's not limited to this is human nature.
Yes.
It's not the recording or touring business. So so I've always started at the top of my list. Uh, and then work my way from there, and that's regardless of the budget,
Hmm.
or the whether I have a record deal or I'm an independent artist or anything. The way I look at it, and look, I know why. It's because I lost my dad when I was a kid, and it happened immediately. He wasn't sick. He was in an accident and he got killed. And it it really informed the way that I look at life, and that life is precious, and that it can change in the blink of an eye. You can you can be injured, you could die. It only takes a just a blink, a heartbeat, and the world has changed. So for me, because of that, I just thought, well, why am I here? If I'm not going to just be going for it, like setting the bar as high as possible and keeping it there and going for my dreams and doing it with the people that live here, the other people who have either grew up here or moved here to do the same thing. I might as well just go back to Miami and get a job, working on a boat,
Oh,
on the cruise, sailing or water skiing instructor or something like that, and have a way easier life,
yeah.
than the one that we've chosen as musicians, or that we've been drawn to.
Well,
So yeah, go ahead, Matt.
yeah. Well, I was going to say, it just sounds like you found a good way to strike a balance between you being, a little reluctant to push yourself out there, like you were saying earlier with the Billy Preston thing, and
Sure.
but you found a way to do it, but in a way that remains true to your character and the way you want to treat people. I think that's fantastic.
Yeah, absolutely. And also, uh, the reality is I toughened up as I had more experience and
Yeah.
got older, and
Yep.
and I still hold to the same belief. I don't really ever want to do something that's going to give me personal gain at the that's going to cause pain to somebody else.
Sure. Yep.
And I'm not talking about I get the gig that you didn't get, because they like the way I played better. That just plays out the way it is, but
Yeah.
not to do anything deliberately to step on somebody for my own personal gain.
Yeah.
It doesn't interest me. I don't want to live my life that way. I want to be proud of who I see when I brush my teeth in the morning and look in the mirror.
Yeah.
But I definitely have gotten a lot tougher.
Hmm.
And literally, I mean later on in life, when I was 40, I started studying karate and ended up earning a black belt in karate. So
Wow.
I know how to
Awesome.
defend myself now.
Yeah.
And I didn't then. And that carries over, but not how you would think. It doesn't make me more aggressive. It just allows me the ability to stand up for myself more quickly, and I could certainly be aggressive, but it brings another level of confidence, and also again working in television, because I know we haven't spoken about this yet, but I music directed 2 late night talk shows.
Yeah.
So doing that's a tough gig, man. People are not always very nice when you're doing a live TV show. There's a lot of money and a lot of egos, and there's some wonderful people, but there's also occasionally some people that are just not happy people, and they go out of their way to make other people around them miserable, or make it difficult. And when you could just as easily make it easy for somebody.
Sure.
So that toughened me up a lot too. Yeah, absolutely.
All right, there you go. That's the first part of my conversation with Terry Wollman. Hope you enjoyed it. I certainly did. Now, in the second part, we talk a bit more about Terry's TV career, both as a music director and guitarist, and some of the rabbits he's had to pull out of the hat on that sort of gig, but also as an actor in front of the camera. Terry is a man with many hats, and yet another one is as a radio host, hosting the show Making It with Terry Wollman, talking to other creative people like musicians, actors, producers, managers about building a creative career. And that's a great show. I've been checking it out on iTunes. I highly recommend it to you as well. All right, also remember, we are on iTunes, or Apple Podcasts as they're called now. You can look up any of our episodes there, or Stitcher or iHeartRadio if you're using an Android device. We're on Facebook and Instagram, and we love to hear from you on those platforms. We have a Facebook group, a closed group called Guitar Speak Forum. You can look that up and ask to be part of that group, and we're always happy to have anyone. And we talk about the show, but we also talk about general cool guitar stuff. It's a good guitar hang. All right, I'm going to get out of here. We'll see you again for another installment of the Guitar Speak podcast. Stay tuned, and I'll catch you next time. Bye now.